Last year, I had a struggling business, $500,000 in debt. I laid off half of my sales team because they weren't closing enough deals to even stay in business. And yet, last month, we did a little over $3 million in new revenue. And this is my team's actual stats. So this month, we're pacing for about 3.9 million, and I have multiple reps that are going to close over $1 million a deal by themselves this month. The only difference between now and then was a really small change that I rarely see talked about in sales management. And it is actually this number right here called revenue per lead and how it relates to the DQ rate as a percentage, as well as the actual qualified close rate. And I'll be honest, I don't have a bunch of sales experience to be doing this, but I do have a decade of experience in math, financial accounting specifically. And today, that is what I hope to explain to you in plain English so you too can get control of your sales team, whether you are good at sales or not. And so when I was at the lowest in my business, $400 in my bank account, I decided I was going to stop trying to win a game that I didn't understand, the psychology of the sales stuff, and I was just going to moneyball the whole thing. So today I'm going to show you how I attach 20 plus KPIs to every single sales rep so I just know who's actually good and who's just complaining that the leads are bad, and how I'm able to coach reps without ever watching a single sales call, as well as double their commission with one single change that actually happens off call, and know how they're going to perform before I even hire them. With this, you can stop relying on subjective metrics like how good was your objection handling, and instead rely on objective metrics like relative operational drag. And I'll actually explain what that means too. So starting off with the most important metric here that most sales teams track, which is total number of calls taken. So right up here, I have the September numbers, and this is every single rep, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There are a couple of different colors that I'll explain in a moment, but we're going to start with the number of calls taken because most people think that is actually the most important. Then we have number of shows, so how many of those calls actually showed up to their call. The number that are qualified, we're actually going to get back to this later because whether a prospect is qualified is completely subjective, and we're going to remove that subjectivity and make it objective. And you should know when making a decision on something subjective like this, something based on opinions, there will always be room for mistakes, and former accountant like me, as well as Siths, prefer to deal in absolutes. So here's how we remove all of the subjectivity around whether a prospect is qualified. And it's actually a secret view on the right that I haven't shared with you yet called team averages, as well as tier averages. So I have multiple different tiers at my company of rep, but we're going to be looking at the average to start. And this is the way that I compare every single rep against one another. So if I see one person having a low show to qualified percentage compared to the rest of the team, I will know that that is not an issue with leads. That is not them getting bad leads. It is a subjective opinion about their lead quality being worse than the rest of the team. And that simply is not true because everyone gets allocated generally the same leads, or at least within the same bracket of leads. The leads suck argument is absolutely not true, but this is just one KPI that we track the crap out of our team. And let me explain a couple others to show you how this all fits together. And by the way, if at this point, all of this sounds like magic, I thought so too until my sales team literally doubled performance in a single month. Because the truth is my company has never actually made $2 million a month because this set of KPIs worked so well that once implemented, we went from 1.4 million per month straight to 3 million per month the very next month within 30 days. And after experiencing this, I completely threw out this old playbook that I was using, and I just started managing my team by only the numbers that I'm going to show you today. I'm going to break it down in extreme detail. First, a metric that you don't hear about very often on sales teams that I got from the lead guy at Gym Launch, actually, who advised our team for a couple of months, is revenue per call. So this is a measurement, and you can see as a percentage of the total revenue that that rep brought in that month divided by the number of calls that they took. And most of this sheet is completely formulaic. For example, I can even estimate how much their monthly commission is going to end up being by looking at what they've done so far. And if you want this entire spreadsheet, if you want the template for it, it's completely free down in the description. There's not even an opt-in. But after looking at revenue per call, I took it one step further and also looked at revenue per lead because it also takes into account how many people you get to show up for a call with pre-call messaging strategies. So it's not just total calls booked, but if you get allocated a lead and then you don't follow up with them to get on a call, I measure that and I understand how much you are actually costing the company because we pay not just for every call, but also for every single lead. And the way that I compare reps there is operational cost. So this is a formulaic calculation where I look at their revenue per lead, the best guy within a subdivision. For example, these tier 1 leads, all of these 3 guys are competing against the same type of lead quality. And this guy has a $0 operational cost, meaning his revenue per lead was the highest of these 3, which is correct. And then I'm going to look at the second second best guy, and this calculation is going to do the difference between what the best guy did in terms of revenue per lead, how efficient he was at closing deals with every single lead I got him, and how the second best guy did. And this is approximately $1,000 difference between the two. But it's not just enough to know that this rep is basically wasting $1,000 per lead that I give him. It's also important to measure not just the efficiency at which he goes after leads, but also the total number of volume of leads he goes after. For example, he did take a few less leads and a few less calls than the biggest dog on the team right here. So this formula takes into account that $1,000 difference multiplied by the total number of leads allocated, which allows me to calculate an operational drag, which is basically just the number that I use to compare reps and understand if I had given all 177 of the leads that I gave to this rep instead to the number 1 rep, how much more money would have that 1 rep made us than the number 2 rep? And it's approximately $184,000, which is the operational cost. So I can objectively say that this rep in this month of September was about $148,000 less efficient than this rep. And it goes further down here. So the third rep here is quite a bit lower. So about $2,000 per lead less efficient with the same exact leads. And so he actually had an operational cost of about $250,000 in the month of September. So with the tier 2 leads, I have a couple of people here that have an operational drag of about $600,000. And what that means is that despite this rep earning me, because we have the estimated monthly revenue here of $306,000, which seems comparable. He was actually one of the highest earners in this entire group of people 4 through 10. He had one of the highest total revenues in the month. He made us $306,000, which sounds great. But when you consider the amount of leads that he took, which is almost double the other reps, we can understand that that revenue actually came from being extremely inefficient and kind of burning a bunch of leads to be able to drive that revenue. On top of that, he probably got rewarded because his commission month to date, as well as his estimated commission throughout the month, which is calculated, was really high, the highest on the team. So this guy is getting paid the most in his entire division. He is closing the most amount of revenue. On most sales teams, you would think he is good, but because we are tracking not just the total revenue he is bringing in, but how many leads he had, his revenue per lead was actually the lowest, and so he had a calculated $600,000 cost on the team. And if you aren't measuring this, if you don't understand how to calculate this, you are probably losing tons of money every single month, and you will continue to do so until you can download this template and do the basic math required to understand how your sales team actually falls. But despite that being one of the biggest numbers on here, there are actually more important numbers. But let's go through a couple more definitions here so I can actually explain how this comes together and give you a full picture of how your sales team should be ran. So first is the leads. We already talked about those. Those are people that are allocated to an individual rep. Calls are the number of people that they can get on a call with to be able to pitch our services, which is a B2B marketing firm. Number of shows is also documented here. That's how many people actually show up to their calls. And we have a call to show percentage here, which is a calculation of how many people they wanted to get on a call, got booked on the calendar, and how many people actually showed up. So the differences here actually illustrate who is better at getting people on calls. For example, I can tell rep 3 here with a 84% call to show rate is way better at pre-call communication and getting people to show up on his calendar than, for example, rep number 1. So if I was to coach these two reps and help them get better at what they do, I could very quickly say that this rep just needs to do a little bit more pre-call communication to be able to get more of their people to show up. He's missing approximately 35% of the total leads that has come in his way here that this rep is able to get. And I would specifically be able to call out this rep and say, hey, take a look at what this guy is doing and then do it yourself to improve your call to show rate. Next is qualified, which we already talked about is a little subjective. And it's subjective because we don't have objective metrics to tell whether someone is qualified or not before the call. They really just get on the call. And then if they seem like a good fit after a little bit of discovery, they're qualified. If they don't seem like a good fit, they're not qualified. And I track this to get a level of confidence in my reps about how they feel about the leads. So we track that as show to qualified percentage. And what this tells me is that this rep number 2 here with a 73% show to qualified rate, where his peers have 91, gets on calls with people and thinks they're not qualified. He does a little bit of discovery and says, I couldn't have pitched them. They wouldn't have bought anyways. They weren't financially qualified. I can tell that 2 other people on his team otherwise have a 91% show to qualified rate, and his is extremely low, which lets me know that he has a low level of confidence in the leads that I'm giving him. This is the type of rep, based on this one number, that I would guess is likely to complain that the leads aren't qualified, or that the leads don't have any money, or that marketing is giving him bad leads. This is what this number tells me, whereas these 2 guys don't. And if the rep came to me complaining about the leads, which by the way has never happened because my team is amazing, but I would be able to tell him to go look at this guy and this guy, watch some of their calls and understand that the leads are the exact same because they're all getting the same tier of leads in this tier 1. Now, if he was moved down to tier 2 where the leads are different, I could totally understand. But even then, the actual show to qualified rate in tier 2, which is a completely different division, is also worse. And looking at some of the discrepancies here, we can see that this first rep number 4, had an 80% show to qualified ratio. He was extremely confident in the leads that he got all month, whereas this rep had a 50% show to qualified ratio, meaning he was saying half the time I'm on a call with people, they're not even qualified. Next, we're looking at total number of deals won, which surprisingly is one of the only metrics that most sales teams track, but it is just one of many here, and specifically how it plays into the qualified close rate. So this is a percentage of deals that a rep thinks are qualified related to the number of deals that they actually won. So a high qualified close percentage here means that the rep is both confident in the leads and that they're actually able to close them. Whereas the other rep here means well that they are trying to close these leads. They believe they are qualified, but he himself knows that he's potentially lagging. This is that indicator that tells me he knows the leads are good, he knows they're closable, but he is not closing as much as this guy is. And then show to close is one higher tier metric. So whether you get someone to show up on a call or not, whether they're qualified or not, what is the likelihood of you closing there? Just a little bit more detail here, but very similar to the qualified close rate. Lead to close is actually how many leads my marketing team needs to give a closer to be able to earn a single deal. For example, we can see here that with 10 to 1, this guy closes 1 out of every 10 leads he gets, which is absolutely insane. And this one closes 1 out of every 25 leads we get him. So it's just another way to compare the efficacy of individual reps. Now we're looking at revenue per sale. If you have any kind of service that varies in cost, or there's multiple different entry points or packages, or you have some kind of enterprise thing that is more highly incentivized, you should be tracking average sale to better understand how big are these contracts that they're getting over the line. Because it's not enough to just win a deal. If you're winning $10 deals every single month and have 1 million deals in a single month, it's not as impressive as being able to close 2 deals for 1 million each. But of course, more important than that is actual total revenue driven by the rep. So this is the throughput. And so we can see that rep number 1 here closed 852,000 in deals for me last month. He was part-time. He did take a week off. So it's definitely going to be a lot higher this month as well as this rep here. We're probably shooting for like 1.5 for this rep in the month of October and then 1.2 for this rep here. And then this one I think took about 2 weeks off and we had a couple of lead flow issues. That's also a little low. But more important than that is revenue per call. And this was that metric that I talked about earlier. I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but it's just revenue driven by the total number of calls taken, which is even better expressed by revenue per lead. So not just how many calls you get on, but how many leads total does marketing have to give you and how much do you make for that? This way you can track your marketing costs, such as cost per lead, the CPL, and then back into revenue per lead to really quickly be able to forecast revenue. And that is how we plan out, for example, a $3.9 million month, is we have a certain amount of marketing spend allocated for a certain rep. We know what their revenue per lead is, and then we can just forecast what their estimated monthly revenue is. That's literally the entire calculation. Sometimes we do it with revenue per call, sometimes we do it with revenue per lead. You can choose which one you can track better or more accurately, and sometimes I flip it depending on the rep, but this allows us to forecast revenue with an incredible amount of accuracy. We also have a commission month to date, which is pulled from another sheet that all of the sales reps use to track their own stuff. And this is a current progression. Since this is measured at the end of the month of September, it's already calculated. But then we also do calculate in the middle of the month what their estimated monthly commission is going to look like. So this is not just how much they've made so far, but based on their total monthly call availability, how many open hours they have that month, and they just tell me a total number. This is how much they're probably going to make. So 1 week or 2 weeks into the month, they can actually forecast how much they're going to take home at the end of the month. And they can change their behaviors, either take a week off if they're okay making a little bit less, or work some extra Saturdays, Sundays if they wanted to make a little bit more open at their hours. Next is effective hourly rate. And this is largely just a hiring metric. Being able to throw this up on an interview and show what my entire team makes per hour working is incredibly compelling to bring more reps onto my team. By the way, if you're a good rep and you love being KPI'd because you know you can outperform, link down below to apply to work for my sales team. They make a lot of money as demonstrated here. And their effective hourly rate is just a calculation of the total commission earned month to date divided by the number of showed appointments they have. So whether someone shows up on a call, which is an hour-long call, and they spend either 30 minutes or 45 minutes or an hour, we just round up to the whole hour, and this is their effective hourly rate for showing up to one of those sales calls and pitching someone based off of what they already have earned this month. Then we have operational costs, which we've already discussed, and over here we have team averages, so I can compare what the entire team did throughout the month. That way, when someone raises their hand and says, hey, this is exceptionally difficult for me, or the leads are bad, or the system is broken, I can point to the team averages and show them, nope, everyone on the team absolutely killed it this month. And it allows me a lot more leverage in both negotiating with employees as well as fixing problems earlier by being able to demonstrate what success looks like. Now, one thing I haven't explained yet is what these different colors mean and why we have different tiers of performance. Why are some of these yellow and some of these oranges? These are actually different tiers of leads. And within each tier, I can basically tell what a lead is going to be worth, and then I can KPI performance based on that tier's averages. That way, when a lead comes in, for example, they enter their information with a Gmail, I know exactly how much that Gmail lead is worth because they're not using an enterprise email. And this video explains how to calculate what a lead is worth to you before they even get a call using multiple different metrics that we use internally that you can just copy.